Welcome to episode 1 of Seen and Heard, the weekly podcast from the Journal Scene. I am publisher and managing editor Brandon Roberts, here with
staff reporter Eon Bailey. I'm very excited to get started with this podcast. I think it's a really important and exciting resource.
I've said routinely that we don't talk enough about what we do here. Eon and I have had this conversation many times. So today we're going to talk about what we do here, the process of news gathering. We have down here, how do we find our stories at the Journal Scene? How do you find your stories?
I think finding stories is just a matter of being plugged into the community and keeping an ear to the ground. It's something that happens naturally. I do spend time seeking it out, but I also feel like a lot of stories come to me just by having lived here my whole life, knowing people, getting tips, noticing things. It's a very natural process. Another thing is that I just attended that panel from Post and Career that talked about how do journalists fact check their stories. It was called How to Know What's True. I thought it was a great event, and they talked a lot about public records as a source for stories. And that's something that I'd like to do more of here at the Journal Scene. So there's more that we can incorporate moving forward that I think could be good.
Yeah, and also something I started at one of my previous jobs was the legals. You can go through the legals and find all kinds of stories, just ones that'll just pique your interest. Like, why are they advertising for this, or why are they doing this, or whatever. And you and I have discussed too, mistakes happen. Typos happen. It's just, as newsrooms shrink and our responsibility grows, that's going to happen. What we don't like is errors of fact. No. Either of us, no journalist should like that. So, yes, I think what the Post and Courier did with the League of Women Voters of Charleston was great. Fact checking, but really sometimes it's just a matter of picking up the phone or Googling. And of course sometimes, and we don't really say this a lot, but we're told wrong information and then we report it as fact. And I guess I don't know if there's a way. Is there a way to combat that?
Yeah, I guess bringing in multiple sources, looking at a variety of resources to kind of verify things. I've made the mistake of finding one source that said something and it was inaccurate, and if I had looked at some further sources, that wouldn't have been a problem.
Then you kind of get down the rabbit hole of you look at 4 sources and you get 4 different things, and then you're like, well, now I don't know what to believe. Yeah. But either way, I think, by the way, we do a great job here of being accurate. I think that's mine and your number one priority is accuracy and fairness and all the things that come along with making journalism great, and important, especially local journalism. It's one thing if the USA Today spells someone's name wrong, but if we do it wrong, that we know these people.
Yeah.
They let us know. They'll call us or catch us at Thursday and be like, hey, you spelled my name wrong in the paper. Oh. Surely no. Sure enough, we do make mistakes, so
and it keeps me up at night, but I'll try not to let it.
I don't like it, and it used to keep me up at night, but the way I've got through it is I look at, if I get 100 things right and 1 thing wrong, that's still pretty good. And I don't want to get any wrong, of course. But if we get most of everything right and 1 thing wrong, then I think that shows that we are doing what we need to be doing. It's the other way. If we get everything wrong, then we just got to get out of here.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
On the topic of fact checking, I think another important note is, what the protocol is when we do make a mistake. I really like working at an outlet that is happy to post corrections and own up to the mistake, because not only is the story corrected online, but there's a level of transparency and accountability that matters a lot to me.
I had a journalism professor in college who remains my mentor this day. He said, nothing shows that you want to be fair more than running a correction. I don't get offended when we get asked to run if it's warranted. There have been times where I've told people no. Because we've recorded, they've called and said that's not what I said, and we've got what they said. And, I'm like, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. I'm not going to run a correction, but when it's warranted, we'll do it. That's just everything.
How long does it take you to write a story?
Oh, well, that's going to depend. I've written as many as 4 in a day. I've written as many as 1 in 4 days. So, as you know already, in your short time here, a lot of it depends on what you're writing. A lot of it depends on when people get back to you, if they get back to you. If there's a particular piece of information that needs verified that you just can't let yourself let it go to print without knowing. Stuff like that will hold you back. But it's turned, like, say, if I go to a meeting and the meeting lasts an hour, I'll go over the transcription for about an hour, and then it'll take me about maybe an hour to write it, 30 minutes to put it in the system, get all that stuff, pictures, cut line up. So you're looking at, what, 4 hours?
4 hours. Yeah.
On a basic meeting story.
Basic meeting story.
Where you don't have to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Wait 2 days for whatever. What about you? You're getting better. I know what you're going to say, but you're getting much, much better at time limits.
Yes. I think the meetings still take me a little longer because it's a lot of information to parse. I feel like I have the benefit of being there and seeing everything for myself. So when I'm making decisions about what to include for other people, I take that seriously because they weren't there like I was. And so when I was beginning, I wanted to write everything that happened. Now I know that maybe not everything is actually newsworthy. Important, sure, but we're limited with space. People's time and attentions are limited, so it's about prioritizing. But it still takes me a while to be discerning and figure out what I want to include and how to write the story. So I would say, whereas it might take you about 4 hours to do a basic meeting story, between going to the meeting, reviewing the meeting notes, writing, putting it in the system, tweaking it, I would say it would take me maybe 5-6 hours.
Yeah. See, and that's something a lot of people don't realize. We get to go to all these meetings twice because we go to them, sit through them, record them, and take notes, and then we get to go home and basically listen to that again when we're writing the story. So, time consuming, yes, helps out a lot with our being accurate and stuff, for sure. But there's just with all the advances in technology, there's just still no better way to cover a meeting been developed. So
yep. But with different stories, like with some of the more
let's look at Eva's. You had Eva's written yesterday. That story about Eva's closing yesterday. By the way, today is, I guess we should have mentioned at the beginning, Thursday, March 20th.
Yes.
But you had that story written yesterday in about 45 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
So
I would round it up to an hour between the time I spent interviewing and taking photos, which was not long.
Yeah.
And the stories like that where it really feels like a story or a tale from somebody's life, I feel like those come together really easily.
And they're way, way more fun to write. I mean, no offense to the meeting holders out there, but you have to know that they're not the most fun to write.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but gosh, they're probably the more important ones that we write too. So at the same time, So for instance, this last council meeting I covered, Summerville Town Council, I wrote 3 because once I wrote it, it was long enough. I noticed there were 3 main parts, so I just broke that story into 3. Only one got in the paper this week, but it was about the concerns about development. But I also, there were 2 other facets of that meeting I felt like warranted their own story.
Mm-hmm.
So I broke it into 3. So, I mean, sometimes that can happen too. And then sometimes these things are just so long. You're reading letters from people, 10 people speaking of public comment, and then you got your regular business and all that. That's where we just got to use our judgment, come in and say, all right, what do we need to include here?
Yes. The next question is who informs? And you've been doing this for such a long time, and you know so many people in town that I feel like you can't walk outside without somebody informing you of something.
Yeah, that is a beautiful place to be in because, well, number one, just knowing the people. Number 2, them feeling comfortable enough to come up to me and say, hey, have you heard about this, or have you did you see this, or you know what this means? And gosh, got to be honest with you about being honest with them. When I first started this, someone would come up and ask me, oh, did you know this, or you know what that means, or whatever. My ego wouldn't let me tell them no. I acted like, oh yeah, I know, but what do you think? Yeah, of course I know. What do you think? That gets you nowhere. Just be honest. Be like, no, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. Please inform me what you're talking about. And they will. They're more than happy to, as you know. And those people are so valuable. And I feel like they realize the value of the local news too, because otherwise they wouldn't care about what they're telling you or care to even tell you. I mean, well, you're from here. I mean, you have to have at least you probably had an existing network of people that you didn't realize were that network until you started here.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine.
Yeah. One thing that's kind of funny is a lot of people, if they don't know me, they at least know someone in my family. And I can't really go out around town without, people be like, oh, I know your mom and dad. I'll be trying to work. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not my mom and dad. I'm Sean.
Yeah.
I'm a reporter, but that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But when I interviewed you for this job, you said, I'm from here. I know what's important I know what people here care about. And that was like, well, I'm just so lucky that you also know how to write and be a reporter. Those are different things. You can be a great writer and not a great reporter, or be a great reporter and be a terrible writer. But just having the wherewithal to know how important that is was so valuable. I told our boss today at our lunch that I could not have made a better hire than you. And I truly mean it. And I'm not saying that because you're sitting here. Because you and I don't agree on everything, and we're not going to bring that up on the podcast, but we are on the same page in terms of what we want this paper to be.
Yes. And I'm very excited for that. And thank you for the compliment. I'm still working from this kind of frame of mind where I'm trying to learn and improve every day. But I guess that never really stops, and it shouldn't go away over time. But I'm excited looking toward the future because I have basically infinite amount of time to hone those skills. But it is like a focus every day to try and, reduce style errors, to be factual, to broaden my scope, and, build more rapport with people in the community.
And that's another thing, our topic here is the news gathering process, but what people don't realize is there's so many facets that go into all this. Like, how long does this need to be? Who do I need to, what quotes do I need to include? Does this quote need to go up higher? It's just a nonstop. I have never in 21 years of doing this now, I've never been happy with anything I've written. I've never written anything and said, all right, that could not be any better. Because it always is. I've gone home before, gone to bed, laid in bed, thought about something in a story, got up, put my clothes back on, drove back down to my office and changed it. I mean, it could be one word, one sentence, one placement in the story. I've done that so many times. It drives my wife crazy. Then I'll get up in the middle of the night and come change. Of course, now I just take my computer home. This was back when couldn't load your desktop up and take it home. But I guess you could have.
If you're very dedicated.
Yes. It would be deadline day or whatever. So another thing you and I agree on is the stories are out there, not in here. I am not a desk editor. You are not a desk reporter. There are some people who are. They just email, they call, they don't really go out and do much. But you and I are out of this office every day a ton. I mean, dozens of times.
Yes.
Going to take pictures of this, going to interview this person. One thing I love that you do is every interview you've ever done in person could have been done over the phone. Probably. But you always do it in person. I think it's so important because you get to know this person, you see how they act and live and look and all that stuff, and that really shapes the way you write a story. So wouldn't you feel like you needed to go out?
When wouldn't I?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of maybe some examples of stories that I've already written that I might not have gone out on. But I don't have a paper in front of me, so I'm having trouble conjuring one. Because I wholeheartedly agree, for the most part, it is important to go and lay eyes on the scene, and kind of start to, it's like an instinctive thing. What stands out and what's a compelling and truthful narrative that I'm absorbing by being here physically. We don't go out on like crime stories.
Correct. Danger is a factor on whether we go.
Yes. Also,
and we don't have a scanner, so we really don't know as they're happening, even though we can hear the sirens.
Yeah, certainly. I guess sometimes news breaks and it might not necessarily be crime, but it also might not be something that we can wait on, that we have to write up quickly and put out there.
Correct. And or anything really that we're writing on that's over, of course we wouldn't go out on.
Mm-hmm.
But like, for instance, I thought of an example of yours. The gentleman who wrote the Donald Trump song, you went out and interviewed him.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that he had a massive home theater and all this equipment and all this much stuff. So this was, and you realized when you got back, you told me, you said, this man has a wonderful home theater, and all this, and he's done all this stuff like.
He had the patent for drone landing pads.
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd known that had you not gone out there.
Right. And that was really interesting because it could have just been about the song and been a very like political only story. And it was a political story, but it was also very much like getting to know this other human being in the community. And he was interesting, and I had fun on that one.
Do you get offended if you don't know something that happened? For instance, Monk's Corner. I know you don't. And we also handle. I also handle the Berkeley paper. A lot of people don't know that. Eon has had some stories in the Berkeley paper, but just by geography. So we have a whole separate Berkeley paper. But anyway. I get up this morning, I get on check my Google News feed, and the first thing I see is like 2 different TV stations in Charleston had a story about Monk's Corner hiring their new police chief. So I'm thinking, well, of course, I must have it in my emails. I started looking, I don't have it. It really bothered me. Why don't we have it? I don't know, I can't speak for you, but that stuff like that bothers me. I'm not kind of bad way, like I don't get angry or whatever, but it bothers me. Why didn't we have it? Turns out they were sending it to my predecessor's email, which is a legitimate thing. I mean, it's not like they just kept us out of the loop. But when you start, if you haven't already, but when you start getting offended in a way that you don't know about stuff, or people have told the TV stations or even the Post and Courier and not told us, that's like a milestone, I feel like, in your career. Once you get to that point, we should know this.
I will be looking forward to reaching it.
Yeah. Especially if it's something you've reported on.
Yes.
Like if it's one of your quote beats.
Yeah.
Town council does something, we read about it somewhere else. Well, how in the world do we not?
Yes.
Just talk about not sleeping on that.
That'll
be your next one. And you have, I see the last question, or the last bullet point we have to talk about, how to know what media to include with a story. I don't know if any of you people listening to this have looked at our website, looked at our social media, but since Eon came on, we have grown leaps and bounds in terms of how we deliver. Like, Eon's made videos, wonderful videos to accompany stories, graphics to accompany stories, videos about stories that kind of stand alone. I think the Pinewood one, I mean, we ran with it, but it could have been its own thing. And that was one of the things you felt very passionate about when you got hired. Talk a little bit about why that, other than it being necessary pretty much these days, but why you love the video so much.
It's one of those kind of indescribable things, like why you like your favorite color or why you like your favorite food. It's just something I really, really enjoy. The process makes sense to me. I've been lucky enough to have gotten a lot of practice in before I worked here. And so it's almost like solving a puzzle. It's very satisfying because you have all this information you need to incorporate, and working out how to do that with the technology, with the planning, with the editing and organizing and storytelling. It's really satisfying to see it all come together. So on a personal level, that's why I enjoy the video editing and video creation. But then on a professional and idealistic level, I think it's really important to deliver different types of media to our audience because not everybody consumes information in the same way. If I had it my way, we would have videos for every single story, but that's just not possible. So what we do now is we kind of look at ones that would be the most visually interesting and go for those. And so that has included like a Lego robotics team, a gibbon sanctuary, some amazing Gullah cuisine at a restaurant, just things that really pop on camera.
Oh, the dance.
Yes.
I thought that was one of the better ones.
And I didn't like that. I mean, I was happy with being able to cover that story because I thought it was a great event, but I was not happy with how that video came out, so I'm glad you liked it.
You've gotten there.
Yeah.
You've gotten to that milestone where you're not happy with anything, because that was a good one, because that was a very visual heavy story, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you could describe it, but when you watch the video, you're like, it was just like any video, I guess, but it just put it on a whole different level. At least for me, it did. I thought that. And when we first discussed you covering that, your exact words were, "That's got video written all over."
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you're right. So I guess we're going to try to do more of that, right? I mean, you're going to try to do make your video production just to keep it as routine as it is now. Right?
Yes.
We're not going to stop doing video.
No, never. Yeah, that's absolutely not happening. I would like to do at least one video a week. And it doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes I'll plan to go out on a video and then the story doesn't work out. Sometimes none of our stories really have that opportunity for exciting images on screen. But usually we can do about once a week, and I think that that's a good goal. Also, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I really want to do Meet Your Public Servants every week when possible.
We need, or I would like to do also like a day in the life of one of us, just so people get an idea of like the things you just named off that you've done videos of, Gibbons, Legos, Golagichi cuisine. I mean, that is going to make you so well-rounded. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one thing about this job is if you ever were to leave this job and apply somewhere else, and they're going to be like, oh, what are you comfortable covering? Like absolutely everything. Mm-hmm. I can cover a council meeting. I can cover a Gibbon sanctuary. I can,
yes.
You're going to, well, they say flying a plane and riding a boat in the same day. Mm-hmm. That's just how this job is.
Yeah. And that's part of why I gravitated toward this profession. There's just nothing else really like it. It's kind of unpredictable and exciting how dynamic your day can be.
Low pay, high stress, never the same day twice.
And highly addictive.
Right. So that's one of those, like I always told my wife, every time I've left newspapers twice, and as soon as I've left, I wanted to go, I've missed them so bad I went back. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I get back, I realize, or ask myself, what have I done? But then again, I just love it. Especially, and this job in particular is, I feel like my dream job, because I got 2 papers. I did have 3, but I have 2 papers. I have a reporter now. I get to cover whatever we want to cover. It's in a place that's growing. There's tons of news around here. Great weather. I mean, what's not to love about it?
I started journalism. I mean, you could make the argument that I started as a kid making little fake newspapers for my neighbors, but I got serious about it in high school, around the age of 15 or 16. And when I was in my early 20s, after taking a bunch of classes, going to competitions and conferences, working internships, doing it as a hobby and a job and a field of study, I took a little break and was kind of thinking to myself, like, I need to know who I am without journalism. And I felt so sad without it. Yeah. And I realized that it's just an integral part of me. And it is not something you walk away from easily.
No, and even when I walked away from it twice, they were both public relations jobs, and I had a soft spot for the print media specifically in those jobs. I was like, my boss would get all mad. They printed the headline on purpose. Or I was like, no, Judge, the headline's accurate. You got to realize what they're limited in space. Blah blah blah. So I constantly he told me, don't take up for the paper. It's like, that's not going to happen. I can't help it.
Yeah.
and my story's a little more fantastical, as we would say, because I was going to be a lawyer, majored in political science, minored in journalism because my advisor in college said, hey, law schools love students who can write well. So I would recommend journalism as a minor. So I'm like, all right. So I take journalism as a minor. I get a part of my job, or for a grade, I had to work for the college newspaper. So I go cover this story, come back, and I saw my byline in that free weekly college paper and was just absolutely hooked. I was like, this is what I got to do. And this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it never gets old. I love every week putting out this stuff. I love it.
That's great. I think it's great that, even just kind of going into a conversation about how do we make the news, a big portion of that is why we make the news. And it's because it's, we're passionate about it because it's fun. But we also care a lot about the ideals, ethics, and values surrounding this. It's important as much as it is fun.
Yes, and I would almost argue that it's for sure equally, if not more important, to uphold those values and ethics at a small community paper like this, because we are part of the community. The bigger paper, I'm not talking about all of them, but a lot of the bigger papers are just so big that, a couple people get upset over something, then it's just, they really don't make any waves. But if a couple people get upset over something we do, we're aware, we know.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We address it, like we talk to them, or we kind of mentioned that before, but you're right. Just because I don't want people ever to think we're just some little small podunk operation here. We are a for real, serious, important news organization.
Yes. I think that, the local level is where you are most affected by local politics as opposed to national politics, local news as opposed to national news. You can affect change in your community more than you can affect change on a broader scale. And so I think that a little, quote unquote, little paper like this is actually the most impactful type of paper, because it's direct and focused into your locus of control.
Well, and I've said for years, the members of town council, wherever you are in a town, community, the members of your town council have way more effect on your day-to-day life than the president of the United States does. I mean, a president can make 100 decisions before any of them affect you. Almost every decision made at the local level affects you in some way.
Yes.
So, and that's what we're focused on, which is back to full circle why we're important.
Yeah. And that's not to dismiss the importance of national news. It's more so to highlight the extreme importance of local news.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, national news obviously is crazy important, but you can get national news anywhere. There's maybe if a TV station shows up to town council, you'll have, that outlet and us reporting on town council. That's it.
Yes.
I mean, if we went away and the TV didn't show up, one of the TV stations didn't show up to town council, you may never know what goes on. That's where important.
We've discussed how we find stories, the fact-checking process, how long it takes us to create stories, and who informs us, and what it's like to go out on stories, and why we even do this in the first place. And I think that's a really kind of a fun starting point and an important starting point for this podcast. But looking to the future, I'm really excited to talk about our goals for the paper, our audience and how we want to engage them. And also the sky is the limit. We can seek community input for future topics. We can have guests on. And one thing that we were talking about before is incorporating more media, because you never know how people prefer to receive information. So it's great to meet them in a multitude of ways. And I think this podcast is a great opportunity to continue to pursue that. So I'm excited. And this has been the first episode of Seen and Heard. Thank you so much for listening.